She had everything money could buy, but nothing her heart truly wanted. He had nothing but a worn leather wallet and a daughter who meant the world to him. Their worlds were never meant to collide, until they did, on that rainy Tuesday afternoon at a small coffee shop on the corner of Maple and Pine. What happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, loss, and what truly matters in life. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that remind us of our shared humanity. The rain pelted against the windows of Elise Montgomery's Bentley as her driver navigated through downtown. She stared blankly at the passing storefronts, barely registering the world beyond the tinted glass. At 36, Elise had amassed a fortune that most people couldn't comprehend, a tech empire valued at over $3 billion, properties spanning 4 continents, and a name that opened doors before she even reached for the handle. And yet, as she sat in the plush leather interior of her luxury car, all she felt was hollow. 3 months ago, her fiancé of 2 years, Richard, had walked out of her penthouse and out of her life. Not for another woman, not for another man, but because, as he put it, living with you is like living with a ghost, Elise. You're never really here. The words had cut deeper than she cared to admit. Because they were true. Ms. Montgomery, we've arrived, her driver announced, interrupting her thoughts. Elise glanced out the window at the modest coffee shop. It wasn't her usual haunt, far from the upscale establishments she frequented, but today, she couldn't bear another meeting with people who only saw her bank account. Thank you, James. I'll call when I'm ready to leave. The small bell above the door jingled as she entered, shaking raindrops from her designer coat. The cafe was warm, filled with the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee beans and something sweet baking in the oven. It was nearly empty at this odd hour between lunch and dinner, just how she preferred it. She ordered a simple black coffee and chose a table by the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. The coffee arrived steaming hot, served in a chipped mug that somehow felt more authentic than the fine china she owned. The bell jingled again. A man entered, holding the hand of a small girl who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. They were both slightly damp from the rain, the man's worn jacket suggesting he hadn't expected the downpour. The little girl's pigtails were coming undone, wisps of dark hair framing her face. "One hot chocolate for the princess," the man said, his voice gentle as he approached the counter. "And a regular coffee for me, please." The little girl tugged at his sleeve. "Can I have whipped cream, Daddy? And sprinkles?" He hesitated, just for a moment, so briefly that most wouldn't notice. But Elise did. She recognized the mental calculation, the quick assessment of whether such a small luxury could fit into a tight budget. "Of course, sweetheart. It's a special day, isn't it?" The girl beamed, revealing a missing front tooth. "The most special. I got a gold star in reading today. That's my girl." His pride was palpable, warming the room more effectively than any heater could. Elise found herself watching them, unable to look away. There was something about them, something real and unpolished that she hadn't experienced in years. The man was attractive in an understated way, probably in his late 30s, with laugh lines around his eyes and a day's worth of stubble. He wore no wedding ring. As they waited for their order, the little girl spun in circles, her rain boots squeaking against the floor. She lost her balance and bumped into Elise's table, causing coffee to slosh over the rim of her mug. "Sophie." The man rushed over. "I'm so sorry about that." Elise waved away his concern. "It's fine, really." The little girl, Sophie, looked up with wide, apologetic eyes. "I'm sorry I spilled your coffee, lady." Something about her earnest expression made Elise smile genuinely for the first time in months. "That's okay. I was almost finished anyway." The man grabbed napkins from a nearby dispenser and began mopping up the spill. "I'm Daniel, by the way. And this hurricane of energy is my daughter, Sophie." "Elise," she replied, deliberately omitting her last name. For once, she didn't want to be Elise Montgomery, tech mogul and Forbes list regular. She just wanted to be Elise. "Can we sit with you?" Sophie asked suddenly. "Daddy says I need to practice my reading with different people so I don't get shy." Daniel looked mortified. "Sophie, we can't just invite ourselves to join someone." Actually, Elise heard herself saying, "I'd love the company." And so they sat, the billionaire, the single father, and the little girl with mismatched barrettes in her hair. Sophie proudly pulled out a thin book from her backpack and began to read aloud, stumbling over longer words but pressing on with determination. Daniel watched his daughter with such naked adoration that it made Elise's chest ache. When was the last time anyone had looked at her that way? Had anyone ever? "She's remarkable," Elise said softly when Sophie took a break to sip her hot chocolate, leaving a whipped cream mustache on her upper lip. Daniel nodded. "She's everything to me. After her mom left when she was 2, it's just been us against the world. That must be difficult." He shrugged. "Some days are harder than others. I work as a carpenter, custom furniture mostly. The hours can be flexible, which helps with school pickup and doctor appointments, but the income isn't always steady." "But you make the most beautiful tables and chairs," Sophie chimed in, chocolate smeared across her cheek now. "Daddy's hands can make anything." Daniel laughed, wiping her face with a napkin. "Well, not anything, but I try." "Do you have pictures?" Elise asked, surprising herself with her genuine interest. He hesitated before pulling out an older model smartphone. "A few. I'm not great at the whole social media marketing thing." As he scrolled through photos of his work, Elise was stunned. The pieces were extraordinary, tables with inlaid patterns that seemed to tell stories, chairs that somehow looked both modern and timeless, bookshelves that curved like waves. "These are incredible," she said, meaning it. "You're an artist." Daniel's cheeks colored slightly. "Just a guy who likes working with his hands." "Daddy, I need to use the bathroom," Sophie announced, sliding off her chair. "It's right over there, sweetheart. Can you manage on your own?" Sophie rolled her eyes in that way only children can. "I'm 6.5, Daddy. Not a baby." They both watched as she marched determinedly toward the restroom. "She's growing up so fast," Daniel said, a hint of melancholy in his voice. "Sometimes I worry I'm not giving her enough, not just things, but experiences, opportunities." "She seems pretty happy to me," Elise observed. "She is, most of the time. But there are moments, like last week, when she came home talking about her friend Lily's trip to Disney World. Or when she needs new shoes because she's outgrown another pair in what feels like minutes." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm telling you all this." "Sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers," Elise said. Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her, and she had the unsettling feeling that he saw past her expensive clothes and carefully maintained exterior. "You know," he said quietly, "when you first walked in, I thought you had everything figured out. You have this presence. But your eyes tell a different story." Elise stiffened. "My eyes? They're sad. Like you're carrying something heavy." The simple observation, delivered without judgment or pity, cracked something open inside her. Before she could stop herself, words began pouring out, about Richard leaving, about the emptiness of her success, about how she'd built an empire but somehow lost herself in the process. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, she admitted, "but most days, I can't remember the last time I felt genuinely happy." Daniel didn't seem shocked or impressed by her wealth. He just nodded thoughtfully. "Money is a lot like oxygen," he said. "When you don't have enough, it's all you can think about. But once you have enough to breathe, adding more doesn't make the air any sweeter." The simplicity and truth of his statement struck her with unexpected force. Sophie returned, climbing back onto her chair and reclaiming her hot chocolate. "What are you talking about?" Grown-up stuff, Daniel replied, smoothing her hair. Boring things. All grown-up stuff isn't boring, Sophie declared. Like ice cream. And staying up late on weekends. Elise laughed, a real laugh that surprised her with its authenticity. You're absolutely right, Sophie. They talked for another hour, about Sophie's school, about Daniel's dreams of opening his own furniture studio someday, about books and movies and places they'd like to visit. Not once did Daniel ask about Elise's company or her wealth, even after she'd revealed who she was. He seemed interested in her thoughts, her opinions, her as a person, not as a potential investor or connection. When it was time for them to leave, Sophie had a dentist appointment. Elise felt an unexpected reluctance to see them go. It was nice meeting you, Daniel said, helping Sophie into her jacket. You too, Elise replied, meaning it more than she'd meant anything in a long time. Sophie gave her an impulsive hug, sticky fingers, and all. Bye, Elise. I hope you feel less sad soon. As they walked out the door, Elise made a decision that would alter the course of all their lives. She followed them out into the now gentle rain. Daniel, wait. He turned, eyebrows raised in question. I have a proposition for you. 6 months later, Elise stood in the doorway of the newly renovated warehouse that now housed Montgomery and Hayes Fine Furniture. The space was magnificent, high ceilings with exposed beams, walls of windows letting in natural light, the scent of wood and varnish hanging in the air. Daniel was working at his station, carefully sanding the edge of what would become a dining table for a client in Manhattan. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. Just in time, he said. I wanted your opinion on the finish for the Jacobson Commission. Their partnership had begun as a business arrangement, Elise providing the capital and business acumen, Daniel contributing his extraordinary talent and vision. But it had quickly grown into something more complex and meaningful. For the first time in her life, Elise had invested in something that fed her soul rather than just her bank account. She'd scaled back her involvement in her tech company, delegating more to her capable executive team, and found herself spending more and more time at the workshop. Sometimes she handled the books or met with potential clients. Other times, she simply sat and watched Daniel work, mesmerized by the way his hands coaxed beauty from raw lumber. And increasingly often, she found herself at their dinner table, a Daniel Hayes original, naturally, sharing meals and stories and laughter with him and Sophie. Where's the hurricane? She asked now, using their affectionate nickname for Sophie. In the office, allegedly doing homework, but more likely drawing designs for, when I'm a furniture maker like Daddy and Elise. His eyes crinkled with amusement. She's decided that's her career path this week. Last week it was astronaut veterinarian. Elise laughed. Ambitious. She moved closer, running her fingers along the smooth edge of the table he was crafting. It's beautiful. It's getting there, he agreed, setting down his tools and wiping his hands on a cloth. But you didn't come all the way across town just to check on this table. Elise took a deep breath. No, I didn't. Over the past months, as spring had turned to summer and now to fall, something had been growing between them, something neither had put into words yet. There had been moments, hands brushing as they both reached for the same tool, lingering glances across rooms, conversations that stretched late into the night after Sophie had gone to bed. I've been thinking, she began, then stopped, uncharacteristically uncertain. Daniel waited, patient as always. It was one of the things she'd come to love about him, his ability to be still, to listen, to give space for thoughts to form. Before I met you and Sophie, I thought I knew what success looked like, she continued. I had metrics and milestones and quarterly reports to prove it. But now I realize I was measuring all the wrong things. He stepped closer. And what are the right things? The way Sophie's face lights up when she masters a new word. The pride in your eyes when you complete a piece you've been working on for weeks. The feeling in my chest when I walk in here and you both look up and smile. She swallowed hard. I've spent my whole life chasing after what I thought would make me happy, only to discover that happiness was something entirely different than what I imagined. Daniel reached out, taking her hand in his calloused one. What you told me that first day, about feeling empty despite having everything, I understood that more than you might think. After Lisa left, I had Sophie, which was everything, but I still felt like something was missing. Not money or success, but connection. Elise finished for him. Real connection. He nodded. That day in the coffee shop, when you looked at my furniture photos with genuine appreciation, when you listened to Sophie read without checking your phone once, when you shared your own struggles without pretense, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. What was that? She asked softly. Hope, he said simply. Hope that maybe life had more in store for both of us than just getting through each day. The workshop was quiet except for the distant sound of Sophie humming to herself in the office. Dust motes danced in the slanting afternoon sunlight. Elise felt as though she was standing on the edge of something momentous. I'm falling in love with you, she said, the words both terrifying and liberating. With both of you, actually. And it scares me because I've never had anything this real before. Daniel's smile was slow and sure. We're falling in love with you too. Sophie's been dropping hints for weeks that we should ask you to move in with us. She has? Subtle ones, like Daddy, wouldn't it be nice if Elise was here every morning, and, do you think Elise would want the blue bedroom or the green one if she lived here? Elise laughed, even as tears pricked at her eyes. And what do you think? Instead of answering with words, Daniel closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands with the same care he showed his most delicate woodworking projects. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home to a place she'd never been before. I think, he said when they finally pulled apart, that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold. They can only be given freely and received with an open heart. From the doorway came a small squeal of delight. They turned to see Sophie watching them, her homework forgotten, her smile wide enough to show the new tooth growing in where one had been missing when they first met. Does this mean you're going to be my mom now? She asked Elise, hope shining in her eyes. Elise looked at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly, then knelt down to Sophie's level. I would be honored to be part of your family, Sophie. But I don't want to replace your mom. I want to be something new, something additional in your life, not something that takes away from what you already have. Sophie considered this with the serious contemplation only children can give to important matters. That's okay, she decided. I can have a mom and an Elise. That's even better. As Sophie threw her arms around Elise's neck, Elise caught Daniel's gaze over the little girl's shoulder. His eyes held the same wonder she felt, the amazement that something so precious could grow from a chance meeting on a rainy afternoon. Later that evening, as they sat around the dinner table in Daniel and Sophie's modest home, Elise realized that for all her wealth and accomplishments, she had never felt as rich as she did in this moment. The table was simple, the food was homemade, and the conversation was punctuated by a 6-year-old's giggles, but it was more satisfying than any 5-star restaurant or executive boardroom had ever been. Penny for your thoughts, Daniel said, noticing her momentary silence. Elise smiled, looking around at the slightly mismatched dishes, the crayon drawings magnetized to the refrigerator, the worn but comfortable furniture that told the story of a life lived with love rather